Hey, what's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome into the Saturday morning show with Colten Kahler. I am obviously your host, Mr. Colten Kahler. It's a busy Saturday. Get the Final Four ready for you. But first, this is the Colten Kahler Show, sponsored by or presented by the Betting Superstore. Head over to the Betting Superstore, get all of your merchandise needs from hoodies, t-shirts, tank tops, and other accessories. You can get it at the Betting Superstore. So head on over and get your stuff there today. But as I mentioned, it's a big day in sports. We've got the Final Four coming up. Um, we're headed towards the Masters. We're headed towards opening day next week. It's a busy week, and a lot's happened since last Saturday when we talked with Tom Ackerman of KMOX Sports in St. Louis. And a lot is set to happen before next week when I meet up with you again next Saturday. So we'll get ready for, let's see, our first matchup, Villanova and Kansas. Villanova and Kansas is our first matchup today. That tips off at 5:09 Central Time on TBS. Kansas is the 4-point favorite currently. And this is a game that I really like Kansas in. And a lot of it is due to the fact that Justin Moore is out. And Justin Moore is the second leading scorer on Villanova. Obviously, we saw him go down in the final moments of that game in the Elite Eight. And just what a terrible and unfortunate thing to happen. You never want to see a guy go down, period. But then just to be that late in the game, very unfortunate for Villanova, for Moore. And I think it would have been a really good ball game had Moore still been here. But you never know. It is March. Could be surprised quite a bit. Obviously, Kansas is a very good team. Our good friend Rodney Newpol, he's all in on his Jayhawks. He's excited for today. He wants the chance for another national championship on Monday night. So I'm sure he'll be tuning in. And Rodney, if you're tuning in now, I'd love your thoughts on the game. But Kansas 4-point favorite here. Final Four held in New Orleans this year. I like Kansas in this game, and a lot of it's due to because Justin Moore is out. Also, I mean, they've just got some dudes. Ochai Agbaji, 18.9 points average on the year. Just whenever they need a bucket, they're able to go to him, and he's able to produce. And he's kind of that guy for Kansas. And you've got Christian Brown. He averages 14.3 points per game. Lethal 3-point shooter if you leave him open. And then Jalen Wilson, averaging 11, leads the team in rebounds at 7.4 a game. David McCormick, he's got, double digits. He averages, almost 7 rebounds as well. And they also got guys that they can bring off the bench that help a lot. Kansas is a little bit deep. They go about 7-8 guys. So, they're right in there with, a lot of other teams, but it's March and you might get a performance that we're not used to seeing. So, again, I don't want to rule out Villanova, because of Justin Moore being injured, but Colin Gillespie is really going to have to put the team on his back here, the senior there for Villanova, and I just don't know if he can do that because coming off after, the ACL injury, they say you're never the same, and can he get by the defenders of Kansas because they're going to force pressure on him and they're going to make him beat them. And I don't know if Gillespie can do that. I mean, he's very talented, leads the team in points per game, averages about 15.6. But yeah, Justin Moore, 14.8 right there. So they're going to have to rely on Jermaine Samuels, Caleb Daniels. Those are the two other guys that average double-digit points. Will Eric Dixon or Brandon Slater step up? Those are two guys that come off the bench right there for Villanova. So it's going to be interesting. This will probably be the afterthought of the day of the game. I think Kansas is going to pull this one out, but this is probably going to be the afterthought because second game of the day, Duke, North Carolina. I mean, it's a story that writes itself. I personally, I'll be sick if I have to watch Duke and Kansas Monday night in the national championship. Two of college blue bloods. And you've got Coach K playing for national championship in his final game. You got Kansas that I hate. Bill Self, he's not well liked around here in the central Illinois area. But Kansas, North Carolina, the 8th seed coming in, Duke, the 2 seed. And if you look at the spread there, Duke is favored by 4 points. This game will tip off at about 7:50 Central Time on TBS as well. Kansas, though, as I failed to mention, the last 1 seed left in the NCAA tournament this year. So we have 2 seeds in the Final Four. But I mean, this really, for Coach K's last season, for Duke, North Carolina, their first time meeting in the NCAA tournament, you really could not draw this up any better than, right here, Final Four, and I heard yesterday on ESPN radio that the thought of playing for a national championship will be an afterthought. It won't even be, something in mind for probably the players and the coaches. Now, Coach K will disagree, but these guys they're going to leave everything out on the line because it's another, Duke, North Carolina matchup. And they will, leave everything out there on the court. So I want to go North Carolina with this one, but I really like Duke to cover the 4 points. North Carolina's been really hot down in the stretch here. They've been playing some great basketball in the tournament, and they've really, UCLA played a close game against North Carolina, but I don't really think the Bruins really had a chance in that game. It just seemed like they were playing from behind too much, and they just couldn't get over that hump, which is, one of the closer games that they've played. Obviously, Baylor took them to overtime in the second round, but had there not been that flagrant 2, I really don't know if Baylor would have been in that game. Obviously, you can't play that game, but UNC was dominating Baylor in that game, and they're up by like 25 points. And obviously, Baylor had a great comeback, and some people will say that the refs were not kind to North Carolina in that game, but they found a way down the stretch. They got the win, and that's all you can do. It's good teams win and great teams cover is what they say. But North Carolina was able to get the win in that one and move on, and then they blew out St. Peter's in that Elite 8 matchup. Finally, the reality set in for a 15 seed. It finally caught up to them. And they looked like a 15 seed in that game, as something that we hadn't seen through the first 3 games, taking down North Carolina or Kentucky, Murray State, and Purdue in their first 3 games. But big news as well. The St. Peter's coach Holloway, he is now the Seton Hall coach. And one thing that came out of that was all of the players from St. Peter's showed up to his press conference in support of him. So that's really cool to see. But in this matchup, again, North Carolina, Duke. Duke won the first matchup of the year in Chapel Hill. They pretty well dominated that one. And then in the second game, Coach K's final game at Cameron Indoor Stadium, the Tar Heels came in and dominated Duke in that one and sent home the Duke fans a little frustrated and kind of rained on the parade a little bit there at Cameron Indoor Stadium. But it's the rubber match, and it couldn't be much bigger. But the only thing bigger is playing for a national championship at this point. So, I think the thing about Duke is, I think with anything, either you grow up loving Duke or you grow up hating Duke. There's really no in between. And I will say Jim Matson here in Central Illinois did a great story on the news last night of Coach K reaching out to former Washington head coach Kevin Brown when he, was still fighting his cancer and whatnot, and just the conversation that they had, and a very touching story. It's why sports they're the best. They really are. So it makes me like Coach K, a little bit more, but growing up, I just couldn't stand Duke, and I really don't. So to see Duke and Kansas in the national championship. I'd rather not. So I'm hoping for, the inner fan in me is hoping for a North Carolina Villanova matchup, but I'm expecting to get a Duke Kansas matchup on Monday evening. So that's the final four right there. And if we get to Monday night with a Duke Kansas matchup, oh, I kind of like Duke. I really do. They've got that youth. They've got a plethora of weapons to use, and it's a story that writes itself. Coach K, one of the greatest of all time, rides out in the sunset with a national championship, and his players send him out, and he goes out at the top and the highest spot in college basketball. And I really think it's a story that will never live down, we'll never hear the end of, but it's a story that writes itself. I think if Duke makes it to Monday night, I think they'll get the win over Kansas. So Rodney, if you're tuning in, I'm sorry for betting against your Jayhawks if that's what it comes to, but you don't mess with fate and history, and but I think that's what's going to happen on Monday night. If Duke gets there, they'll bring home the championship. Hey, we've got MLB as well. Big news. Last week we talked with Tom Ackerman of KMOX Sports, and I asked him, what are the chances of the Cardinals bringing him home, bringing Albert Pujols home? And little did I know, about a day or so later, it happened. It would happen. So number 5 is back in St. Louis. We've seen him a little bit in spring training here already. Just the ovation, the standing ovation that he has received so far in Jupiter. And Thursday can't come soon enough. I'll have a St. Louis sports special live from outside the stadium when I get there on Thursday. So be looking for that. Cardinals and Pirates next Thursday, opening day. It's the greatest opening day there is in sports. St. Louis Cardinals. There is nothing better than the Clydesdales, the trucks, the guys, riding around on the warning track. You bring back all the Hall of Famers. It's a truly a special, special day to be in St. Louis. Twice a year, hopefully, if it happens, you get it on opening day, and then it happens relatively again on the first postseason home game. So you'll get the Clydesdales as well. It's a tradition unlike any other in sports, and something that you don't see. The Cardinals are looking to make a push in the NL Central Division this year. It's a weak division, and did this signing, by the front office, was it an actual baseball move? They'll say that. We'll see what happens. Albert is 21 home runs away from getting to 700. So that's a big part of where he's trying to get to right now. But obviously he's also just trying to help this ball club win. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. He's trying to do everything he can in his ability to get this team to another championship. He's been here for 2 of them, and it's special to have him back. He was my favorite player, and I couldn't be more excited. I know some people aren't as excited. They think it was kind of a publicity stunt by the front office and to appease the fans for having a pretty bad offseason, which they kind of did. Because Albert primarily sticking the DH spot for the left-handed pitchers. And when it gets to right-handed pitchers, we'll have Corey Dickerson as the DH there. Albert, might play as the backup first baseman. Some people are mad that it's taking away from the younger talent. Yeah, but he's arguably one of the greatest to ever put on the uniform, the birds and the bat. And so I think he deserves to end his career in St. Louis. It's what it is. He was brought up in 2001 with became the machine. Again, helped us win 2 World Series. And for him to finish his career in St. Louis here, it's only right. So I personally like the move, more for the nostalgia than anything. But again, the Cardinals did have a pretty bad offseason. They signed Steven Matz. He'll have to be an innings eater. Not very flashy. I mean, but again, that's kind of what the organization does. They're not very flashy with their moves. I think they will have to make a move as we talked last week, at some point in the middle of the season, they're really going to have to move someone, and I think it's going to have to be in the starting rotation or at least a pitcher of some sort. Jack Flaherty at this point, I'm ready to kind of cut ties with. I'm ready to trade him and try and get a return. So I would shop him around because the guy just can't stay healthy. And even when he is healthy, it doesn't seem like he's at his best. I mean, he had that great last half in 2019, and that's really kind of all we've seen from Jack Flaherty. We haven't seen much of him in the last 2 years or so. So at this point, I'm ready to trade him. And I think you could get right now, you can still get a good return of investment on that, because when he hits free agency here in a few years, you may not get as much, or he may choose not to stay. And I truly don't know how much he wants to stay in St. Louis. And if he's leaving, you want to try and get something, and they've got to do that. So other news around the MLB, Jacob deGrom will miss the first part of the season due to shoulder tightness, had an MRI done. It was kind of inconclusive what came back, but he is having, some tightness and whatnot. So he will miss the first few starts of the season, probably a good month or so in the season. And I called it. If you watched the show on Tuesday night with Tanner and I, Baseball Spotlight, or Between the Lines, excuse me. I called it. The Mets were my biggest loser of the offseason because of Jacob deGrom not being able to stay healthy. And I try to tell you, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. The Mets are losers. It's what they are. As Mike Rizzo says, they're losers. Yes, they are. Because they spent so much money on one guy. They really didn't make their lineup any better. And so here we are. They're stuck without their star pitcher yet again, who, when healthy, is arguably the best pitcher in baseball, but he can't stay healthy, can't pitch an entire season. We've yet to really see him in a primetime spot because the Mets can't get there because their lineup is atrocious. And I think that the Mets finished third in their division this year. I really do. Yes, the Phillies have the worst defense from last year. Their pitching staff, not great, but they're going to hit, and they will hit. And I don't know if the Mets will be able to compete with that. And I really don't know if the Mets will be able to stay healthy enough to even compete in general. And so it's why they were my biggest loser of the offseason, is because they were so focused on getting one guy who's late in his career, who's still a very good pitcher in the MLB, but they overpaid for him. And here they are, back with square one because Jacob deGrom can't stay healthy. And when, you throw him quite a bit in the offseason, in spring training like they have, something is bound to happen. And just, his velocity and everything, it's a consistent issue with Jacob deGrom. And until something changes, the Mets are not going to succeed. Yes, he's a generational talent and he is very good, but again, it's not pretty for the Mets. So elsewhere in the MLB, not a whole lot going on. We're wrapping up spring training. Teams will be heading back after Tuesday. News-wise, not a whole lot. Again, not a whole lot going on. Let's see. The Cardinals do play today. Play Houston at 5:00 tonight. Pittsburgh and Boston play. Atlanta, New York. Again, these are all spring training games as we're getting ready for the team. Teams start heading back and get ready for the regular season. Oh, yeah, big trade yesterday. The Dodgers traded AJ Pollock to the White Sox for Craig Kimbrell. It's a 1-for-1 move. I like it. I think that the Cubs officially won the trade, giving up Nick Madrigal. The White Sox did for Craig Kimbrell, and once Kimbrell went to the South Side, I mean, he really, really struggled down the stretch after being one of the better closers in MLB in the first half last year. So that trade did not work out well. if you're the White Sox. And I really like AJ Pollock though, because it gives Liam Hendricks back in his spot where he was succeeding last year, and you get that other outfielder, with a power bat that you really need. Pollock is pretty solid. Um, and the 1-for-1 trade, not really a whole lot of money involved at all. So I really like that move for both teams. And the Dodgers lost their closer and Kenley Jansen to the Braves, and so they needed someone to fill that void. And here they are, um, back with square one. They get Craig Kimbrell in that trade. So I really like that. Oh, also, the MLB umps announce replay reviews to fans. So kind of like the NFL, they'll put on a headset and announce what they saw and, kind of the decision, and they'll explain the call. And I think it's a great move by the MLB. I think it's them continuing to modernize the game, and also it explains, the unknown. But baseball's a little bit different than football, because I think baseball's pretty cut and dry when it comes to a lot of calls. So, but I do like the move. I do like that part by the MLB, and we'll see how it plays out. So that will wrap up the MLB talk. We'll move into the Masters. Next week, we're headed towards the best week in all of sports, in my opinion. The week at Augusta National. Bring out the green jackets, pimento cheese sandwiches, the Georgia peach ice cream sandwiches. Bring it all out. I'll be ready for the Masters. And looking at our favorites, I believe Jon Rahm is still the favorite next week. For that, I believe Jon Rahm is still the favorite. Let's see here. Rory McIlroy, I believe, was the second favorite, which would be interesting to look at because Rory is still trying to fight, and look for that career Grand Slam. Also, they've updated. Jon Rahm at plus 900, according to CBS Golf, is your leader in odds heading into next week. I like Scotty Scheffler. He's really hot this year. He's the new number one. He had a long week last week at the WGC Dell Technology Match Play. So will that affect him going into next week? I don't know. Jordan Spieth, plus 1,200. Great odds there for Spieth, the former Masters champion. Should be a two-time Masters champion, but he's not. Things happen in golf, and I know that more than anybody. But Spieth, he's really struggled to get back on track, and he made a big step forward last year, but he's starting to struggle again this year. So he's just got to find that consistent swing. That tempo is really what he's working on, and to see if he can put, a round together. There's certain courses that Spieth always plays well at. This week at the Valero is typically one of them. I believe he's won there once or twice. Won last year, I know that for sure. So he's defending his title this week. He plays well at Pebble, and he typically plays well at Augusta as well. So it would not be a surprise to see his name in contention come Sunday late afternoon. Tiger, big news there. If Tiger comes back for the first time in over a year, I think the golf and the sporting world would just blow up. I mean, it would be unbelievable to see Tiger Woods back at Augusta National for his first tournament in over a year. I would not expect him to compete. Obviously, he wouldn't play if he's not going to compete, but it's a big difference between, going out and practicing and getting ready for a tournament and then playing a tournament. They're, two totally different things, and Tiger knows that more than anybody. But all signs are pointing towards Tiger playing. He's got plus 6,000 odds right now. We'll see. Colin Morikawa plus 1,200. Justin Thomas plus 1,200. Rory McIlroy, there he is at plus 1,400. Dustin Johnson, the former Masters champion, at plus 14. Last year's defending champion, the defending champion, Hideki Matsuyama, plus 2,800 odds. That's kind of, I would buy into that a little bit. Very rarely do we see a lot of guys go back-to-back at Augusta. But Hideki's a solid player, and I think last year really showed that. But looking at John Rahm, he's going to be the favorite for a lot of tournaments and a lot of majors this year. Now the number 2 golfer in the world, but he held that number 1 ranking for quite a while after a very great year last year. He would be the 3rd Spaniard to win a green jacket after Seve Ballesteros and obviously Sergio Garcia, I believe in about 2017, was it? Somewhere around then. But Sergio Garcia, he's won a Masters before. So again, he would be the 3rd Spaniard to win that one. My pick for the Masters, I like Will Zalatoris. Last year, you typically every year at the Masters, you see one young guy that no one knows really make a run. And Will Zalatoris was that guy, finishing, I believe, in 2nd last year, behind Hideki. And I think the Sunday nerves got to him a little bit, and he played really well last year. I wouldn't be surprised to see his name again. Brooks Koepka, you could always throw him in that conversation as well. But I really like Will Zalatoris for some reason heading into next week. But it's going to be a busy week because you have the Masters starting on Thursday. If we see Tiger, the golf world will be on fire. You have opening day on Thursday. The baseball world is going to be on fire. Heading into the weekend, obviously, the weekend at the Masters, we'll have baseball, finally back. We'll be done, with college basketball. It is a busy week this next week in sports. I couldn't be any more excited heading into next week. But again, final 4 picks as we got to earlier, Villanova and Kansas. I like Kansas -4 in this one. I think the Jayhawks will be able to, I wouldn't say a double-digit point win, but it wouldn't be surprising to see something close to that. I think they'll cover the -4, with Villanova not having Justin Moore. North Carolina Duke, another -4 matchup here for Duke. I like the Blue Devils in this one. I think it's going to finally run out here for North Carolina. They've had a great run, but you can't bet against Coach K, the Duke Blue Devils, in his last season. History just loves to write itself, and I think Duke will bring home the win in this one. And then I said earlier, if Duke gets to Monday, they're winning it all. Coach K will go out at the top. He will go at the highest point. He will ride off into the sunset with another national championship. And I think that's kind of where we're headed, because it's funny how the world works sometimes. But that'll do it for me this week, guys, here on the Colten Kahler Show. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next Saturday on the Sports 2.0 Network. But be sure to tune in Thursday for my St. Louis Sports Special. But that'll do it for me this week. See ya.